Welcome back to another episode of Remnant Stew, the podcast that reminds you that the world is a curious and wondrous place. I'm your host, Steve.
And I'm Leah, and over there's Phil.
Howdy.
Today we're delving into ancient runes, cryptic inscriptions, and the decoding of mysterious ciphers.
Like my handwriting.
If you have an appetite for the strange and bizarre, then pull up a chair and grab a spoon for another intriguing serving of Remnant Stew. Remnant Stew is gluten-free, organic, made from all natural, free-range ingredients, and guaranteed to provide the recommended daily serving of curiosity.
All right, let's look at the calendar. You know, it's almost September. This year is just flying by, isn't it? So let's look at some interesting September holidays. Coming up this Saturday, September the 4th, is International Bacon Day.
Oh, that's
nice.
awesome.
I could get wrapped up in that.
Sounds like a great day.
I'm expecting gifts.
International Bacon Day. International Bacon Day seeks to raise awareness about bacon.
Because who's not aware?
That's why they call it International Bacon Day, right? They were not.
Yeah, where's that restaurant? We got International House of Pancakes, but where's the International House of Bacon?
Good deal. This day aims to promote and celebrate the cured pork dish. International Bacon Day was created in 2004 by Colorado University graduate students. Of course it was. Makes perfect sense.
Well, absolutely. They've been hamming it up.
Oh, gosh. Anyway, it's observed annually on the first Saturday of September.
Bacon grease. Bacon grease is my favorite essential oil.
Oh, do you do you keep a jar of it on your stove?
I do.
My grandmother doing that.
Actually, I do. I'm from the South. You know, you got to do that.
But wait, September 4th also is World Beard Day. Yeah, I'm liking that day myself. This day aims to celebrate and promote those who are gifted with good facial hair genetics. I got a good facial hair genetics, not so good top of the head genetics.
So bacon grease in the beard, you just wax it in?
You can combine them together. Yeah. World Beard Day is believed to have been recognized as far back as 800 A.D.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, been around for a while. It's observed annually on the first Saturday of September. Now, of course, next Monday, September the 6th, is Labor Day here in the United States, where we honor the achievements of the American worker. It's also the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, or the Jewish New Year. But I bet you didn't know that it is also National Read an Actual Book Day.
An actual
book day.
No faking it with them Kindles, folks.
Put that e-reader aside and pick up an actual book for your reading enjoyment pleasure. There is something nice about holding an actual book in your hand, isn't it?
Right, but I got to tell you, you know, I have a Kindle, and I love just being able to download books at the moment. And but I went back and I was reading a book one time, and I sat there with my finger on a word for the longest time, waiting for the definition to pop up.
What does that mean? Not happening. What's
no pop-ups in real life.
Yeah.
Well, I like my Kindle too, because as the older I get, the larger print that I need. But it's still fun to pick up an actual book and read it and hold it and even smell the pages. In fact, we're going to be talking about an actual book here in just a few minutes. Next Tuesday, September the 7th, is Brazil Independence Day.
Yay!
Yay! It was on this day in 1822 that Brazil became independent from Portugal. So this is their 199th birthday. Next year, I'll bet that's going to be a big year in Brazil. It will be their bicentennial.
Let the parties begin.
Right. So happy Independence Day to all of our listeners down in Brazil.
Absolutely.
So this episode is all about runes. No, not prunes, as much fun as that might be. We're talking about runes. So you might be asking yourself, what are runes anyway? Well, runes are the letters in a set of related alphabets, known as runic alphabets, which were used in writing various early Germanic languages. Believe it or not, you have seen runes before. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now where to find one. Take out your phone and go to Settings. Look at the little blue and white symbol for Bluetooth. You were looking at the runic letters H and B. Those give honor to King Harald Blatand, or Bluetooth as he was nicknamed, who unified Denmark and introduced Christianity to Northern Europe.
That's right. We talked about King Bluetooth in our Epic Disasters episode, not because he's a disaster, but the oddity du jour was about brand names, and we talked about how the Bluetooth logo is a rune bind, the combination of two runes for H and B to make one new rune and logo.
So you can look at it right now on your phone. I recently finished reading a terrific book called How Iceland Changed the World, written by a humorous young gentleman named Egil Bjarnason. I learned a lot of history from this book. Even though I've been teaching history for a long time, it's always fun to me when I can pick up something that I can learn some new information from. And in fact, we are grateful to Mr. Bjarnason as he has given us permission to quote directly from his excellent book. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And sorry if we're butchering all of the names and places.
And yours, sorry.
Because as we've discovered, Icelandic has numerous runic elements still left in the alphabet.
Yeah.
According to Mr. Bjarnason, the concept of runes doesn't refer to a single language, but rather a set of ancient writing systems that were used in Europe before the spread of Christianity. Now, when Christianity came along, it led to the rise of the Latin alphabet. Nordic countries, meaning Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, those in the far north of Europe, they kind of hung on to the runes for a few centuries longer than continental Europe. Unlike characters in the Latin alphabet, which only represented sounds, runes could represent entire words or even phrases. And each runic symbol represents different thought processes. They are sounds and words and concepts, but they were also more than that. According to Bjarnason, runes were connected to a perceived spiritual force. When people wrote down runes, they were not simply recording information, they were also invoking or calling upon the powers that each rune stood for. Runes were not merely discursive tools, they were potent means of affecting the material world as well. It is believed by the ancient Nordics that these runes could attract and project energies coming from the spiritual realm. They were utilized by ancient kings and Viking warriors in an attempt to know the future of their kingdom or to impact the outcomes of a battle. So runes they weren't just letters. They had a spiritual power behind them according to the belief system of the ancient Nordics. The country of Iceland was settled in the 9th century by Viking explorers from Norway. Interesting little side note, Iceland has the longest-lasting parliament of any country. Their parliament has been meeting for over 1,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very long stability of self-government there. The Icelandic language is based on Old Norse, and it still contains significant runic elements. In fact, Icelandic students are often recruited by universities and researchers throughout the world due to their ability to translate Nordic runic writings and stories. Many of you are familiar with The Hobbit. Author J.R.R. Tolkien actually hired a 20-year-old Icelandic girl, not primarily as an au pair for his children, but also to help him in his translation of runic writings and Icelandic folk tales. Elements of these runic tales made their way into The Hobbit.
That is, and then further into
the
Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't really. Okay, so I don't know if I ever actually read The Hobbit or if I just watched the movie as a kid. So I wasn't really aware of all the runes that's in it. But I am currently reading Neil Gaiman's book Norse Mythology. So, and you'll recognize the gods Odin, Thor, Loki, all of those. The mythology concerning the origin of the runes is interesting. Odin actually hung himself, he sacrificed himself on a tree, specifically Yggdrasil, I think that's what it was, the world tree, for 9 whole days in order to receive the runes. Odin is associated with wisdom, so basically he sacrificed himself to receive the means for written communication. And because of that, the runes were considered more than just an alphabet. Like you said, they had the power of creation.
Right.
The idea is that the written word invokes reality rather than reflects reality. And that's where the magical properties of the runes come into play. Runes were often used in magical charms for protection and for healing, as well as being used to lay a curse or two. So I am fascinated by runes. The name of the Nordic runes is Futhark. There's a couple different versions of that, but Futhark, I always thought that was a really cool name.
Right.
With some deep meaning, but it's a lot like our word alphabet. Like alpha, beta, that's where that comes from, the first couple of letters. Or even QWERTY, if you're familiar with the QWERTY keyboard. Right. So Futhark is the first 6 runes. It's just the name of the first 6 runes put together.
Of the runic alphabet.
That's right. Another fun fact is that the Futhark runes, there are no horizontal strokes, simply because it was often carved into wood, so the strokes were designed not to be carved into the wood grain, in order to keep from, and to keep from splitting the wood.
Right.
Splitting,
So you would not go with the grain, you would cut against the grain.
That's right. So where are runes found? According to historyonthenet.com, runes were typically carved into stone, bone, antler, wood, like I said, and metal. The most lasting runic inscriptions are found on rune stones, large rocks standing as a memorial to a great person or event, and occasionally just this mundane thing, they found some rune stones that are just saying, I ate chicken today. Not quite so bad, but there are I hate this guy or something. So there are some mundane ones.
Teenagers.
Right. These stones are mainly found in Scandinavia, which has over 3,000 of these beautiful monuments. But occasionally, you'll find one in an unexpected place.
And that leads us to our next story. From StarTribune.com, we come across an article about a controversial and mysterious North American rune stone. Back in 1898, a fellow named Olof Ullman, and of course with a name like that, he was Swedish. He was a Swedish immigrant who recently settled on a farm in Minnesota. He was out clearing rocks and debris in his field, and he was pulling up the roots of a dead tree. He noticed something strange tangled in the tree's roots. It was a large stone that weighed over 200 pounds. As he cleared the dirt off the face of the stone, he was stunned to notice that there was writing on it in Swedish. The writing described a journey and subsequent massacre of a group of Norwegians and Swedes who had been traveling through the area in the year 1362.
Wow.
Okay, so that is really significant then.
Yeah.
That's a significant shift in history.
For sure. As you can imagine, the Kensington runestone became the subject of a lot of local interest. Did the stone's existence prove that earlier Scandinavians had traveled through the Midwest more than 100 years before Columbus? Many believe that indeed it was proof. A local historian stated that the idea appealed to Scandinavian immigrants because this artifact could prove to these newcomers that their ancestors had already come to this land.
Right.
However, always a killjoy.
However,
here we go again.
A fellow named Henrik Williams, a professor of Sweden's Uppsala University and one of the world's top authorities on rune stones, said the language on the stone looks more like modern Swedish rather than anything spoken or written in the 1300s.
Uh-oh.
No scientific evidence of any kind supports a 14th century dating, said Williams. This led some to wonder if old Olaf had been pulling a hoax. However, further tests on the stone indicated that it had been in the ground for about 25 years before Olaf dug it up, which would date the stone to before Olaf and his family came to the United States. So that lets Olaf off the hook. But it still doesn't explain who carved the runes in the first place or why they did it. The mystery is still unsolved.
That's right.
And we have a picture of that one, I believe. We'll
we
put
do.
It on our website, our Facebook page.
We sure do. Another form of runic writing that is Celtic in origin rather than Nordic is it's spelled Ogham, but it's pronounced Ogham. It looks quite different from the Futhark runes. Ogham writing is centered around a central line, usually an edge or a corner of a stone, with the different alphabetic characters carved on either side of or through the line. So sometimes the central line is not an edge, but just a carved line. F, for instance, is 3 lines carved horizontally to the right of the vertical central line. And like the Futhark runes, the character is more than just a sound. It also represents a thought or a word. And in this case, or in the case of Ogham, each character represents a tree or a plant.
Okay.
The 3 strokes for F also means fern. Ogham is usually written vertically, read from top to bottom, and is found on stone monuments throughout Ireland, Scotland, and Western Britain, mostly in Ireland, though.
Right. And, of course, the Scandinavians, the Vikings, invaded Ireland and Scotland especially, and northern England. So they might have brought some of their information with them.
Right, and the idea of rune stones.
Right. The rune stones with them.
Now for today's bookshop spot, the part of the show where we take you on a virtual tour of one of the most magical of places, an independent bookshop.
Our bookshop spotlight today fits right in with our Nordic theme for this episode. I mentioned earlier that we are grateful to Egil Bjarnason for granting us permission to quote from his book, How Iceland Changed the World. And while I was just visiting with him via Messenger, I asked him if he would like to recommend a bookstore in Iceland. And he gave me a couple of names, and one of them is our spotlight for today. Okay, now I can't spell it for you because it's in Icelandic, and there are letters that we don't have in English.
That we don't know the name of.
So, but if it sounds like Froði and Forbakabuo, or which translates into old bookstore.
We apologize.
Yeah,
a lot.
Right.
But this is our first bookshop
internationally.
International, yes.
That's right, so outside the United States.
Exactly. And it's located in Akureyri, Iceland. Akureyri is a town of about 18,000 people located at the base of a fjord on the north coast of Iceland. So Reykjavik, the capital, is like on the southwest. This is a pretty isolated town way up on the north coast, but pretty significant size, 18,000 folks.
Right.
And the pictures I've seen of it really looks beautiful there. Well, the store was established over 30 years ago by a lady named Olga, and Olga, I'm so sorry, I'm going to really butcher your name. It's Agustsdottir. I'll give it a try. Augustdottir. You want to try anything better than that?
No.
Nicely done.
That's it.
Well, anyway, Olga started this bookstore over 30 years ago, but in 2019, it was acquired by two British immigrants to Iceland.
Well, these are easy.
Yeah, Ren Gates and Stu Ness. Thank you guys for having easy names to pronounce. According to Ness, we are renting the store from Olga, and she has basically given us free reign to run the store as we wish. Since we have Since then, we have spent most of our time cataloging the large collection of books, as well as renovating the interior and organizing the sections alongside the day-to-day running of the store. It's really interesting sounds. They offer rare and collectible books, handmade souvenirs, painted stones, and yes, here we go, handmade rune stones.
Hey.
How about that? They also offer public readings, live music, and book signings. When asked about their building, Ness stated the building used to be part of Akureyri's Industrial Center, which contained multiple factories. Now, here's a word I didn't know before. An abattoir, Abattoir. Do you know what an abattoir is?
Yeah, I did know it. Abattoir? Oh. Abattoir, I think is what it... I don't know. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's a slaughterhouse.
A slaughterhouse, yeah. Right. A slaughterhouse. A laundry and corn mill. Many people claim the store used to house a printing press, and we have no reason to think otherwise, according to Ness. When asked about pets or resident ghosts, etc., Ness stated, not exactly pets, but we have had a few visits from local cat populations. It's interesting to think about cats in Iceland. That would certainly be cool cats. Sorry, Phil, that would have been yours. Of course, as animal lovers, they are always granted, the cats, by the way, are always granted a warm welcome until they leave of their own volition and after the owners have been contacted to make sure that they haven't wandered too far. And whilst we haven't encountered any ghosts, given the history of the town and the injuries often caused by old factory machines, we wouldn't be surprised if it weren't at least a couple of regular Phantom customers. Froði does not have a website, but they are on Facebook and Instagram, and so we'll include a link to them on our Facebook page. So
yes,
thank you, Froði, for participating with us, being our first international book store and in Iceland.
Nice.
Oh, I want to go visit so bad.
Yes, it looked like a beautiful place.
And now for something really smashing.
Well, back to our topic of cryptic writings. Now, we talked about ancient runes, but there are some more modern instances of written communication in a rune-like form.
I love this.
From a website called Logo Design Love, which I think is a great name for a website, we find an interesting article about the secret codes of hobos. Mm-hmm. To cope with the uncertainties of life, hobos developed a system of symbols that they could write with chalk or coal to provide fellow, quote, knights of the road with directions, help, and warnings. Hobos were the nomadic workers who roamed the United States, taking jobs wherever they could, and never spending too long in any one place. The Great Depression, in 1929 to 1939, was when numbers were likely at their highest, as it forced an estimated 4 million adults to leave their homes in search of food and lodging. Of those, some 250,000 were said to be teenagers. The economic collapse had destroyed everything in their young lives. They crisscrossed the country, usually by freight train, jumping into boxcars as trains pulled away from stops or slowed at bends in the track. Finding food was a constant problem, and hobos often begged at farmhouses. If the farmer was generous, the hobo would mark the lane so other hobos would know that it was a good place to beg. Markings would be made on fences, buildings, trees, pavements, anywhere a message could signal help or trouble. These symbols had to be simple and easy to understand. For example, a simple cross meant that a meal could be had after listening to a sermon. So like various missions or churches might feed people, but you had to listen to the sermon first. An X meant that the location was safe to camp. An X with a wavy line over it meant that clean water was available. A cat next to a house meant that a kind lady lived there.
Kind old cat lady, right.
Cat lady.
A top hat meant that a kind gentleman lived there. However, a triangle with arms meant that the homeowner had a gun. You can see the triangle with arms sticking out of it. Okay. A circle with 2 horizontal arrows means get out fast, hobos not welcome. And 2 interlocking circles represented handcuffs, meaning hobos would be arrested. Well, when World War II came along with a sudden abundance of decent-paying defense jobs, the number of hobos trailed off dramatically. After the war, increased security and law enforcement made it more difficult for hobos to move about undetected, and the number of the Knights of the Road diminished, but there still are a few around today, and yes, they do still utilize some of these same symbols. So
that's right. So if you've ever had somebody come to your door and ask for a handout of some sort, look around your porch. Like sometimes they will, they'll mark on the foundation or on the curb. That's right. Okay, so let's move on now to ciphers and cryptic inscriptions. I love this one. It's so mysterious. One such cryptic inscription appearing on many old buildings and dating back to the 1st century AD is the Satyr square, sometimes also called the Rhodes square. So Satyr is spelled Sator, and then Rhodes is the same spelled backwards. It's the same word going in reverse. So the oldest instance of this word square was found in the ruins of
Whatever.
Hard to keep it straight.
Right.
Was found in the ruins of Pompeii. So as you know, Pompeii was buried under volcanic ash in 79 AD. So this is going back pretty far.
Way back there.
The square has also been found inscribed on ancient churches in various locations around Italy. It features in early Christian contexts as well as in magical contexts, but no one knows definitively what it means or what purpose it serves. So it's been around for a long time, but the meaning is lost. Mm-hmm. So let me explain what it looks like. It's a square of 25 letters, arranged 5 letters across and 5 letters down. It's very simple. It's a little hard.
Like the mini crossword in the New York Times.
Exactly. It's a little hard to explain without showing it, but it is simple. So reading it from left to right, top to bottom, it says the first word, 5-letter word, is satyr. The second one is a repo. The third is tenant, then opera, and then rotas. And what it is it's a palindrome, meaning that it reads the same backwards as well. Forward, right? So the first word, satyr, and the last word, rotas, are palindromes. The satyr is rotas backwards. And then the second word and the fourth word are backwards like that. So it's a repo, an opera, and then the middle word is tenant. And so the most likely interpretation is that satyr means sower or farmer. Okay. A repo is a common name, somebody's name, like the name of the farmer. Okay. Tenant means keeps or maintains. Opera is work or care, and rotas is related to rotate, so meaning wheels or turning. So altogether, it's something like the farmer or repo uses a plow to do his work. Okay. So it sounds kind of like a parable, right? Yeah. Some kind of parable. But while there's satyr squares in many places, and sometimes even different, like sometimes it starts with rotas and goes backwards. But nobody really understands what that parable is. Like, there's no other instance of that parable or of a story or a mythology or anything like that. So it really is up for interpretation.
It's kind of been lost then, huh?
That's right. But the square has also been used in magic. According to Wikipedia, the square has been used in folk magic for various purposes, including putting out fires without water, removing jinxes and fevers, to protect cattle from witchcraft, because, you got to do that.
Right.
And this is what I love, against fatigue when traveling. So maybe if you write this on your luggage, you won't get jet lag, I
was on a long flight yesterday, in fact.
But sometimes it's said that it's got to be written on a certain material or a certain type of ink to have its magical effect.
Of course, invisible ink wouldn't be good.
Yeah, that's right. So it's often placed on houses and barns for protection. So the Pennsylvania Dutch communities have been known to use the Seder Square as part of their powwow medicine. There is one known occurrence of the phrase on a rune stone located in, I want to say, Narke, Narke, Sweden, which dates to the 14th century, and all it reads is Seder Arepo Tenant. So like the farmer Arepo works. But that's it. And so that's the only other instance of anything remotely like the Seder Square. So,
I wonder if somebody traveled there from Pompeii.
I don't know. So it's really up for interpretation, but it's all over the place in some of these churches and things.
Right.
Okay, so next, if you are a Harry Potter fan, then you've probably heard the name Nicholas Flamel.
Okay.
He was the famed alchemist and creator of the Sorcerer's Stone in America, or Philosopher's Stone for the Brits. In the original British, the mystical object that would grant eternal life. You might be surprised to find out that Nicholas Flamel was an actual person and that he was also, in fact, a famed alchemist.
Okay.
So, what is alchemy? It was an ancient combination of philosophy and science. Many of the practitioners or alchemists were focused on trying to find a way to turn ordinary substances into gold.
Right.
Because if you could turn something very ordinary into something very rare, then you're going to make a lot of money. And to find a scientific avenue of eternal life, hence the Philosopher's Stone. Some believe that the French alchemist Nicholas Flamel, and there's books about it that were written shortly after his death. I'm just going to say his death because he did die. But they think that he achieved both immortality through the discovery of the Philosopher's Stone, and also he learned the secret to turning lead into gold. So he may still be around today.
Oh, okay.
But the reason
Talk to your neighbors, folks. Talk to your neighbors.
But the reason I'm bringing him up is because he loved symbols. There is a building that he constructed in Paris. After the death of his wife, Flamel was a great philanthropist, and this building was okay. So in one instance, I found it said that the building was created in order to house the homeless.
Okay.
But in others, it says that he actually lived there for a time and had his laboratory there. So I'm not sure, but it did do some time helping out the homeless. But it is a 4-story building, finished in 1407, and is currently the oldest stone house still in existence in Paris.
600 years old or more.
The outside of the building is carved with all kinds of mysterious symbols that no one knows exactly what it's all about. And some of them are alchemy symbols.
Right.
You can see pictures of these at atlasobscura.com, or you can go visit yourself. The inside of Flamel's former house has been renovated into a restaurant. One more thing about Flamel. He must not have actually achieved immortality, because he does have a tombstone that he actually designed himself. So he wasn't scared of death. He was looking forward to it. And yet there's all kinds of cryptic symbols carved into it. So there you go.
So like maybe a secret message even there.
Who knows? There was no speculation about that there was a secret message.
It means I live in Brooklyn.
And I'm a hobo. Well, the next story involves a unique way in which the Incas used string and knotwork to record and communicate ideas, a means of communication we were unable to decode until just very recently. In 1531, the Spanish explorer Francisco Pizarro sailed into South America, and he came across a remarkably advanced civilization known as the Incas. Superior weaponry and the smallpox virus enabled the Spaniards to quickly subdue the Inca.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't kill them, Infect them.
The Spanish marveled at the amazing stonework roads and the cities that the Incas had developed. In fact, you can still go to Peru today and see Machu Picchu, the really stunning structures that they built. Unfortunately, most of what we know about the Incas today comes from the journals of those Spanish conquistadors, which often were filtered through a Eurocentric slant.
Right. History was written by the winners.
Right. Even though the Inca had a remarkable message system involving relay teams of runners, they had no written language. But they did have something else. The Spanish noted that nearly everywhere they went, they encountered people possessing a unique assortment of colorful knotted strings and ropes that the Inca called quipus. The Spanish assumed that these textiles were some type of calendar or record-keeping system. Evidently, they didn't bother to explore the meaning of these much further, but they did bring several of them back to Spain to use as nifty decorations. So in Spain, they're, hey, king, queen, here you go. Look at these nifty strings. They're colorful. We found them down in South America. Oh, we like those. We'll hang them up here. So for the past 500 years, not much was really known about the quipus. That is until the year 2016, when Manny Medrano, a freshman at Harvard, decided to spend his spring break studying them. Now, this is pretty interesting. You understand how college students look forward to spring break, but usually it's to go to the beach, not to study some ancient knot system. But Medrano, he's actually an economics major at Harvard, but he always loved history and archaeology, and he's always loved a good puzzle. He enrolled in a course on the Inca civilization taught by Professor Gary Urton. One day, Dr. Urton mentioned to his class that he had just come across a Spanish census from the area of Peru that, at first glance, appeared to have some commonality with a set of quipus that he had photographed. After the lecture, Medrano approached the professor and said, "Hey, spring break is coming up. If you need someone to put a few hours into this, I'd be happy to take a look." So Urton agreed to give Medrano access to the information, not really expecting that he would find anything. But Medrano, who is from a Spanish-speaking family, was able to incorporate the data from the Spanish census and the info from the quipus into an Excel spreadsheet, and there he was able to detect some remarkably detailed patterns.
I love a good Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Just saying.
According to Atlas Obscura, Medrano noticed that the way each cord was tied onto the quipu seemed to correspond with the social status of the 132 people recorded in the census document. The colors of the strings also appeared to be related to the people's first names. The correlations seemed too strong to be a coincidence. After spring break, Medrano told his professor about his theories. And here's the professor saying, I just remember him being really excited, and I was excited too. But like, wow, I think he's really onto something here, said Urton. There were a couple of things that didn't add up, and I would point that out, and he would take it back and work on it for a week or two, and then he'd come back and he would have understood something about it in a deeper level. Medrano worked with Urton over the next several months, and the two compiled their findings into a paper which was published in the peer-reviewed journal Ethnohistory in January 2018. And Medrano is the first name on the paper, indicating that he contributed the bulk of the research, something Urton notes is extremely rare for an undergraduate student, especially a freshman. So good job, Manny.
Absolutely.
Nicely done.
Cool. That is really... Like, my kids need to get after it.
You're not going to the beach this spring break. Forget it.
And now for something completely off topic and off kilter. Brace yourself for the oddity du jour.
Well, you know, Leah, TVs have come a long way. We talk about TV shows frequently here on Remnant Stew, and, I mentioned it here before, but I can clearly remember our family's old black and white TV when I was a little kid. And we even had an antenna on the roof of the house. Actually, it was into the ground, but it went up above the roof.
Right.
Sometimes we had to go out with a monkey wrench and try to spin the antenna around a little bit to make the picture come in.
Yelling in, is it clear yet?
That's good. No, go back.
Your left. No, your other left.
Then cable came along, giving us a much clearer picture and more channels. One June evening in 1966, my big brother Dick won a color TV at a local carnival. And I think I've mentioned it here before. I don't know if it was the first color TV in our town, but it was certainly the first one on our end of town, which wasn't very affluent. And it made me an instant celebrity with all of my friends who would come over to watch Batman in color. Well, more recently, we can all remember around the early 2000s, about 15, 20 years ago, when the old cathode ray tube TVs began giving way to the nifty flat screen high-definition TVs. Mm-hmm. And now, just last September, I purchased a very large screen smart TV. However, with all these advances in TV, I recently learned about a new kind of TV. Have you ever heard of slow TV?
No, not until today.
Slow TV. Well, keeping with our Nordic theme here today, slow TV is all the rage in Norway. Slow television, or slow TV, is the term used to describe marathon coverage of an event typically shown unedited and in real time. The genre was first popularized back in 2009 after the Norwegian broadcasting company NRK broadcast a 7-hour train journey. Basically, they just stuck a camera on the front of the train and said, okay, let's record that and put it on TV for we got a 7-hour gap to fill. Okay,
wait, listen, I can see problems with this. Like, what if it hit something? Like,
right.
What if it hit
see somebody running around?
Well, first on the scene.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, what if it hit an animal, poor animal, or whatever your kid's watching?
Right.
Anyway.
But because it was a live camera attached to the front of the train, it broadcast in real time, and people loved it.
I bet they did. I would watch it.
Of course, Norway is famous for its spectacular scenery. Beautiful mountain waterfalls and magnificent fjords are the very definition of scenic splendor. Mm-hmm. But seeing them slowly and in real time adds an especially delightful dimension to the viewing. Slow TV's passive nature allows the viewer space to reflect and contemplate instead of feeling bombarded with information. After the success of NRK's first slow TV transmission, which was the train ride from Bergen to Oslo, the station aired further train routes, and then a coastal boat voyage, then the opening day of fishing season on the Gula River, and a 12-hour-long broadcast on firewood.
Here's Olaf chopping wood.
Which, by the way, received
and
1
he's
million
still
viewers.
Chopping wood.
And still
1 million viewers in a country of only 4 million people. That's pretty significant. Also, an international attention. Now, this may sound odd to you, but actually I have to admit I watched it for a while, and I found it to be genuinely engaging and enjoyable. So judge for yourself. We'll include the link to it on our Facebook page, which will take you to an article with several slow TV options for you to view for your enjoyment.
Well,
hey, don't get in a hurry, folks.
Slow TV.
To me, that actually is not that far-fetched, because there's a lot of people that turn the TV on just for noise.
Right.
They're not watching it. It's kind of just in the background, and then
background noise for sure.
And so I could deal with that.
Yeah, exactly. Sunday afternoon golf tournaments are good for napping, I've found. So kind of that same reason.
And here he goes, lining up for his shot.
Oh, okay. So getting back to our topic. I cannot talk about ciphers and mysterious writings without mentioning the Zodiac Killer. So if you're like me and obsessed with true crime, you are probably aware of the Zodiac Killer, a serial killer that was operating in Northern California in the late 60s and early 70s and has never been caught.
Right.
He is confirmed to have killed 5 people and injured 2, but the killer himself claimed to have killed 37 people. The sadistic criminal gave himself the pseudonym of Zodiac Killer in the more than 20 letters he wrote to police and local newspapers flaunting his crimes. So he's a little bit of a narcissist.
Really, for sure. Look at me. Look what I did.
That's right. So many of the letters contain ciphers that are unsolved to this day. The 340 cipher, named as such because it contained 340 characters, is one of the most vexing mysteries and has been puzzling authorities since it was penned 52 years ago in 1969. But it was announced in December of last year, so 2020, that some private citizens teamed up and solved the cipher. It has even been confirmed by the FBI to be true. The team consisted of Dave Orenchak, sorry if I'm butchering your name, a software developer in Virginia, Sam Blake, an applied mathematician who lives in Australia, and Jarl Van Eyck, I think that's how you pronounce his name, a warehouse operator in Belgium. Van Eyck was also a software developer behind AZ Decrypt, a code-breaking app that came from his desire to crack 340.
I see.
So you can find, I'm not going to give the Zodiac Killer any space here, but you can find all of his confirmed letters, and I say confirmed because there are a lot of fakes,
right?
As well as the ciphers and their decoded messages by just doing an online search. I will say that the investigators had really hoped the Zodiac Killer would reveal his name in one of the ciphers, but unfortunately, there's no such name in the 340 cipher. And so who the Zodiac Killer was still remains a mystery.
Wow. So, but he played out in the 70s at some time.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Wonder if it's D.B. Cooper.
You know what? There are so many. There's so many ideas of who. And yes, and if you look at if you look at the sketch, because there were two people that he injured,
right.
So there were eyewitnesses, and there's sketches of the Zodiac Killer. And if you look at D.B. Cooper, it could totally have been the same person. It really could have.
Interesting. Well, this article comes to us from the New York Times. In 1989, that was the year the Berlin Wall came down. Boy, what a momentous event that was.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We who grew up in the Cold War era, something we never thought we would see. Well, an American artist named Jim Sanborn, he was busy working on his Cryptos sculpture, which is a cryptographic puzzle wrapped in a riddle that he created for the CIA headquarters. The sculpture has been driving amateur and professional cryptographers mad ever since then.
That's right.
Unveiled on November 3rd, 1990, in front of the CIA's main building in Langley, Virginia, the Cryptos artwork features a large block of petrified wood standing upright with a tall copper plate scrolling out from the wood like a sheet of paper, almost like a scroll. Carved out of the copper plate are approximately 1,800 letters, gathered into 4 groups. Each group contained a cryptic message. Within the first 10 years, 3 of the 4 parts of the message had been deciphered by CIA analysts and also by a university professor from California. The first message was a poetic verse created by the sculptor Jim Sanborn. The second hinted at a buried treasure. The third quoted Egyptologist Howard Carter when he first peeked into King Tut's tomb and quoted, "I see wonderful things."
Okay, so that buried treasure, has that been found?
No, nobody's
maybe
found
we
it.
need to...
Nobody has found that the treasure has actually been there. It just was kind of a hint that it might be there.
We need to get on this.
Right. However, 30 years have now passed, and the 4th message has yet to be solved.
Oh, wow.
Sanborn has actually released a couple of clues to the 4th message, including the words Berlin in 2010 and clock in 2014. But the remainder of the message remains a mystery. Some took this to mean a reference to a unique clock that's located in Berlin that gives the time via a cryptic code, but the meaning remained elusive. In fact, we have a picture of that clock. We can maybe put that one on our Facebook page as well. Sanborn is now 75 years old, and he's concerned that he may not live to see the message solved. So in 2020, he released another clue. "It contains the word northeast," he said.
Can you just hear him getting irritated?
Right? Oh, my gosh. Really? You got the first 3, but what happened?
So far as we know, the latest clue hasn't helped anyone solve the final riddle of the sculpture. Regardless, the sculpture has become one of the D.C. area's most popular selfie photo ops. Take a photo with the unsolved crypto sculpture.
Can you figure out where I am? Click.
So if Sanborn wants to, just kind of give us on the down low.
That's right.
The meaning of it.
We'll
We'll hold that secret.
Yeah,
we'll hold it for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'll be one of our trivia challenges.
That's right.
Yeah. One of the world's top uncracked cipher texts is carved on the 18th century Shepherd's Monument on the grounds of Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire, England. The monument was erected between 1748 and 1763 by George Anson after the death of his wife. It is called the Shepherd's Monument because there's a carving of some shepherds pointing at a sarcophagus that closely resembles Nicolas Poussin's painting, The Arcadian Shepherds. It's the inscription below the carving that has perplexed everyone for centuries, including such notable people as Charles Dickens and Charles Darwin.
Okay.
So there is a D and an M inscribed on the stone, which is understood to stand for dis manibus, which means for the manes, which are mythical spirits of the underworld. Right. This is found inscribed on various ancient Christian tombs. Slightly above and between the two letters is an inscription of 8 letters, O-U-O-S-V-A-V-V. And I didn't, I found it odd that there was a U in there.
Right.
Because, like, on the old Latin inscriptions and stuff, U doesn't exist. But
right.
Anyway, no one knows what this means. Many people have attempted to crack the cipher and have convinced themselves that they are correct, but there's no one answer that everyone agrees on.
I see. So, and he's not around anymore, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So, according to thevintagenews.com, 3 of the prevailing theories are: 1, the inscriptions are an ancient love letter which glorifies the Holy Grail, which goes right along with Dan Brown's all of that. So, number 2, they are George Anson's declaration of mourning for his deceased wife. Like, it's like just something that he knows and no one else knows. And number 3, the monument is a huge prank, acting as a red herring to tantalize whoever tries to find meaning in these inscriptions. A more recent attempt at decoding the monument came from Keith Massey,
right,
a linguistics expert and Latin and Arabic teacher. So he's a little bit more qualified to have an opinion about this.
Does, yeah.
Quoting from the Vintage News, Massey, who was recruited by America's National Security Agency after 9/11, used his vast knowledge of Latin to fill in the blanks. Massey theorizes that the seemingly ambiguous letters O-U-O-S-V-A-V-V may stand for, and I'm so sorry, Oro ut omnes sequuntur viam ad verum vitam.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Get your cheeseburger at Burger King.
That up for us.
But it translates to, I pray that all may follow the way to true life, which is a very Christian.
Oh, well, okay.
Right? It remains to be seen if this last deciphering will be accepted by the academics or if the enigma will continue. Honestly, like you said before, there's no way of knowing for sure what the letters were intended to convey.
Well, that sure sounds like a plausible explanation.
It really does.
One last cryptic item, and this one is fairly well known, I think. From Forbes.com, we find an interesting article written by a gentleman named David Winder, W-I-N-D-E-R, concerning perhaps the most famous 20th century device for cryptic messages, which was the Nazi Enigma machine. And we are grateful here at Remnant Stew to Mr. Winder because he has granted us permission to quote directly from his article.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Winder. Looking for all intents and purposes like a rather large typewriter with added lights and wiring, the Enigma machine was at the very epicenter of Nazi command and control. At its simplest, an operator typed a letter, and a corresponding cipherized letter would illuminate. Decryption was doing the same thing in reverse, with the cipherized text entered, and the illumination provided the original message. The heart of these machines were the rotors, enabling an ever-changing encrypted output for each key. More than 17,000 combinations were possible before the 3 rotors had reached the start once more. In fact, a later version actually used 4 rotors. The base code was changed every day, and it's been said that there were a total of 53 billion possible combinations in all.
Wow, that's impressive before computers.
For sure. And so it's no wonder that the Nazis thought that their encryption was uncrackable.
But
crackable, ultimately, it was. Breaking the Enigma code helped the Allies to win World War II. The earliest German codes had actually been broken by Polish intelligence. After the war began, their information was passed on to the British special units, who were assigned to a huge country house and estate outside of London called Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park, such an interesting place.
I know, Bletchley.
Yeah,
I like that name.
Yeah. It took the British nearly a year to crack the Enigma machine's codes. Their efforts were greatly enhanced by the capture of a German U-boat on May 9th, 1941, which contained an Enigma, its cipher keys, and code books. There's a good movie that came out in 2014 called The Imitation Game, and which details this event. With the code being cracked, the Allies were able to know every move that the Germans were making. However, they couldn't necessarily act on all of the information,
right?
Or else the Germans would know that their code had been cracked.
They had to be sneaky.
Right, and that was the big part of the movie was the realization that we know a certain ship is going to be attacked, but we can't warn them because then the Germans will know. And in the big picture, it would cause more problems to do that.
Oh, that would be hard.
Right. So the men and women who worked at Bletchley Park were in the awkward position of calculating when to act on the intelligence and when not to. And in this article, Mr. Winder notes that 2 Enigma machines have recently come up for auction. It's thought that only about 100 are known to exist. In December of 2019, an M4, one of the ones that had 4 rotors, sold at Sotheby's for $800,000. So
wow!
You can go check out the antique stores around you, see if you can come up with a typewriter that's got a lot of electric lights.
Check your attic. Check your attic in your basement.
Right.
See if you got one.
And then, according to Reuters, in December of 2020, an Enigma machine was actually found tangled in fishing nets in the Baltic Sea. Divers were working for the World Wildlife Fund. They were clearing old fishing nets off of the seabed. They first thought that they'd found an old typewriter, but further investigation proved that to be an Enigma. It appears that in 1945, as Germany was losing the war, ships and submarine captains were ordered to dump their Enigmas overboard. And this is evidently one of those. The divers decided to donate this Enigma to a local museum.
Wow,
Nice.
that's cool.
And now it's time, boys and girls, for the Trivia Challenge.
All right, crowd, hold it down now. You know how our enigma, maybe it is an enigma to me how it works.
Decipher this, folks.
Okay, pull it together. Let's go.
That's going to stay in. I'm afraid they're not going to edit that out. I know how Phil works. Anyway, you know how the trivia challenge, that's what we're doing now.
Trivia challenge, that's it.
You know how it works. Like and follow our Facebook page at Remnant Stew Podcast. Like and share this episode post. Put your answer to the Trivia Challenge question in the comments of that post. The first person to do all of that will be the winner and will be mentioned in an upcoming episode of Remnant Stew.
I also have a lot of really cool, weird, odd socks. So I'll send you a pair.
And a pair of socks.
Get some socks.
And they're new. They're not like my old socks. So
just a sock drawer. Something for you.
These will not be slightly used. They're new.
Oh, and this question comes to us from Harbin. Thank you, Harbin.
Woohoo!
In 2013, Queen Elizabeth posthumously pardoned this mathematician, computer scientist, logician, and cryptanalyst. Cryptanalyst, that's the word.
That's what he did. He was a
cryptanalyst. I want to say crypto analyst, but it's not. It's cryptanalyst. Anyway,
Queen
who
Elizabeth
was it?
Pardoned him.
Who was it, and what did they do to help win World War II? Remnant Stew is created by me, Leah Lamp. Dr. Stephen Meeker and I research, write, and host each episode. Audio and bad jokes is produced by Philip Sinquefield.
You're welcome.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod with voiceover by Morgan Hughes. Special thanks to Judy Meeker and Harbin Gould. You can connect with us through our Facebook and Instagram, and if you have an idea you'd like to hear us cover in a future episode, send us an email at staycurious@remnantstew.com.
Now, before you go, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss an episode. Head over to iTunes and leave us a review. We love reading your reviews. It means the world to us. Share Remnant Stew with your friends, family, and the local cryptographer, and the family alchemist. Until next time, please remember to choose to be kind and
always stay curious.